This podcast is brought to you by VinZero. VinZero pioneers solutions and services to the AEC and manufacturing industries to support net zero targets. Visit vinzero.com to learn more about how organisations design, build and solve through digitalisation. From VinZero to you, welcome to our Think Future podcast series. Each week we'll share conversations with industry leaders from around the world to find out how they're thinking future. Subscribe to VinZero Think Future for access to more episodes, interviews and profiles. The engineering construction industry is at a tipping point. How can we foster long-term growth in uncertain times? How do we navigate technology-driven disruption and meet the challenge of net zero emissions? How do we create a more inclusive, collaborative and sustainable industry for the future? Peter Wilkinson, author of The Steel Ceiling, Achieving Sustainable Growth in Engineering and Construction, joins us today to highlight current issues facing businesses in the engineering and construction sector and to explore what it will take to navigate towards sustainable construction and sustainable business in the future. Welcome to the program, Peter.
Thanks very much, Anthea. Great to be here.
Peter, can you share with us a little about your expertise and background?
Certainly. I started as a mechanical engineer in the 1985, if I recall correctly, which is some time ago, as you probably figured out. Over 30 years, worked in the public and the private sector, spent some time in consulting, been involved in projects large and small across multiple sectors. What I've really discovered, I suppose, over the 30 years is a great opportunity to really work with businesses to improve their capability and also to influence, I think, the challenging behaviour that we see quite regularly in the construction game, which, if I'm to characterise it, a lot of shouting in the industry.
So 30 years in the industry, how would you describe the state of the industry right now?
It's in an extended boom cycle, and if I look back in the last few years, we've certainly been looking forward to an enormous amount of work across the various sectors, be they building, infrastructure and services sectors. Of course, with extended booms eventually comes bust. So, I anticipate the industry still looks to what happens next, even though all the forecasts are suggesting that work's here for the foreseeable future. I think the effect of COVID on the industry has been quite a wake-up call. Certainly the associated supply chain disruption that's occurred, and along with ongoing shortages in workers, that really has caused the main players and, quite frankly, smaller players as well to look back at the way they're doing business. Top end of the industry, we're seeing quite a deal of consolidation, and major players probably exert more control than maybe they have over the last 20 or 30 years. And I think that the mid-tier and smaller businesses may not all be aware that this is going on. What they do feel, though, is that they're feeling squeezed with their margins in particular, and there's good reasons why that's occurring.
So what risks does that expose for those in the industry?
Key risk really, if I look at it from a margin perspective, the smaller the margin, the less the buffer in place, the difference between being in business and being out of business. And so really what that drives is the importance of, number one, being aware of one's position, but then secondly also starting to make some decisions about the business, particularly thinking about sustainability. And when I refer to sustainability, I'm really talking about business longevity. If I think about what needs to happen to improve margins, if you will, on a business and to improve the way business is done, certainly companies that are looking about for improvements see the opportunity for process improvement and technology improvement. The trick there, though, is if we don't quite understand the problems that we're dealing with in the business, it's very difficult, in my experience, to match the solution to the problem with the right technology or process solution. Having said that, understanding how the business works is important, but being able to look at the business, work on it, as I refer to, rather than being mired in the business, extremely important, because there's a series of decisions that typically come up for business on a regular basis, and they need to make the right decision, I suppose, if I'm an owner, how to make that decision count.
So to that extent, what are some of the important conversations we do need to be having?
From a business perspective, I certainly bring the complexity of business back to three simple questions. Are we clear about the why for business, which I use to refer to a vision for a business. Why are we doing what we're doing? Sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, I suspect we ask ourselves that. The what, if we've got a clear understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, then the what is really the strategy that we use to create the business that we're looking for in our vision. And then the tactics, the how, if you will, that really support the business strategy. If we're clear about, if we're looking at a particular problem and we can understand whether it's a why problem or a what problem or a how problem, we've got a better chance of solving the right problem with the right approach. Really, day to day, businesses need to be thinking about their people. I know everybody thinks that the boss spends all of their time thinking about them as individuals. Well, the good news is the boss may not necessarily wake up every morning thinking about you, but they spend a lot of time thinking about the people, the key people in the business, and whether they're in the right role, whether they've got the right skills and experience, and whether the pieces of the jigsaw are fitting together well, or whether there's some dysfunction going on. The next consideration really about thinking about how best owners can make sure they maintain stability in their business, and but at the same time looking to the next phase, if you like, of growth. When we're really faced with challenging conditions and certainly interest rates rising and so forth, many owners are concerned about the implications of that, and the challenge there is that when interest rates rise, there's a lag before we see the effects. And then if we relate to our people who also read the newspapers and consume social medias, they have similar concerns in many cases, and having conversations with people around that, or recognising dysfunctional behaviour when it shows up, really important to maintain engagement with your business.
So people and behaviour conversations are important. What role can technology play in the face of the current challenges for the construction sector?
There's been discussion for some considerable time around fundamental disruption in the way that the construction industry works, and that encompasses issues such as consolidation, supply chain optimization, and technology will definitely drive that consolidation and improvement, disruption, if you will, based approach to business. And so that's what is coming in the broader sense. So thinking about where one sits in that supply chain, and how business who not necessarily be equipped with the latest technology can still interface effectively with that environment. That to me is the major challenge. If I work with 5 different clients who have different technology expectations of me, then I need to think really carefully about how I best manage my technology solution and how those interfaces or integrations may work or not, as the case may be. The improvements that we can achieve out of technology, though, if we think about the looking into the business as opposed to outside at our clients, we can take on board technology solutions that can definitely improve safety, which is a key consideration for the industry. As time goes on, you can see how these ways of managing people and equipment and materials moving and so forth can really drive fundamentally safer workplaces, and in some cases change or even remove the role of construction workers in that process. At the end of the day, though, understanding that technology isn't necessarily the answer to problems that you may raise, but if you're clear about what people you have and confirm they're the right people in place, you've got a good understanding of the processes that you're looking to effectively manage in your business, you've got a much better opportunity to match those people and process to the right technology in your business.
Absolutely. And with so much increased demand for decarbonisation of the built environment and the economic instability, What do you think can be done for mid-tier to assist in the journey for net zero?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Most small and medium business would say to me, "Well, look, I'm being asked to provide a service, build a job, provide materials where necessary, and so forth." And fundamentally, I, as a business owner, and my people will essentially react to the requirements of the larger contractor. And of course, to a significant extent, that's the case. Government, as the buyer of major projects, set the tone in relation to the extent to which we can meet our targets around net zero. They have the opportunity to set the bar and to control the pace at which we enable change through regulation and incentivisation. So, opportunity to both use the carrot and the stick to make that happen. Certainly, the top tier contractors that take on board mega projects are well across government's expectations in this regard and respond accordingly. And of course, then they essentially, through subcontracts, require small and medium businesses to provide that input and in accordance with their requirements. So, your most important part, if you're part of the chain, is to stay informed about what's coming. Certainly, we see the industry changing from a transport construction-led industry to an industry where we see much more enabling infrastructure that's required, such as water, and of course increasingly electricity to connect up hydro projects and solar projects and so forth to the electrical grid. So services are changing as well as the expectations around how those services will be provided with recycled materials and so forth.
Are you looking for a digitalisation and net zero partner to help you achieve your goals? Join the thousands of AEC and manufacturing customers globally who have turned to VinZero to start their journey toward a net zero future. With 32 offices around the world, VinZero can connect you to the right technologies and workflow processes so you can maintain your competitive position and increase profitability. VinZero has an industry expert to help you navigate the best pathway forward wherever you are on your digitalisation and net zero journey. Visit vinzero.com to find out more. And with so much disruption to business right now, what do you think a successful business in this industry looks like in the future?
It's interesting in so far as, with the extended boom that has gone on, many smaller businesses that haven't been operating, for instance, for more than the last 10 or so years may not necessarily recognise that after boom comes bust. If we look back a little bit into history, we are aware that when resources are constrained, inflationary pressures are high, we're essentially going to see a slowdown in the broader economy, and there's an industry that's highly exposed to economic cycles. It's very difficult to see a circumstance where the construction industry won't be affected by that. I suspect that the ongoing effects of COVID in terms of slowdown in construction progress, constrained resources, and then ongoing supply chain restrictions and disruption, which affected, in my view, will absolutely supercharge the next phase that we see. So, it's what I see the not so distant future to have. Government, I think, is certainly aware of what's coming. And there's been efforts made to free up external labour via immigration, which will certainly assist. Hopefully, supply chains will continue to sort themselves out, although various estimates suggest that there's still a deal of work required to sort that out. I think the more challenging problem that we face is essentially investing in industry capability, which I'm sort of thinking about as this different thing to capacity. We can fix capacity constraints reasonably quickly through bringing more people into the country, trained people that can provide the services that are needed. To build capability, we really need to be focused on skills and training. Skills and training, building that into organisations, that takes a little longer to rectify. I see federal government recently in their skills and training initiatives have certainly recognised that challenge and putting some money into encouraging those to skill up people as their organisation and their role changes.
So in terms of investing in skills and training, what perhaps is an example of where you see the capability will need to be for the future worker in construction?
A typical worker in a subcontract role working on a major project, certainly in New South Wales, in Victoria and Queensland, more than likely sort of underground working on a tunnel project. So if we use that as an example, a lot of the physical work that's carried out there and undertaken in dangerous conditions and so forth, really being, I suppose, morphed through technology into roles where autonomous creatures, robots and the like, essentially being programmed to carry out the surveillance, surveying, monitoring and so forth activity that we might typically see technical people being involved in. So, the shift of skills from frontline measurement to monitoring the monitors, if you will, of carrying out that work. Certainly a significant shift, as I suggested before, improving safety, but then also changing the skill requirements of the people involved. How that plays out as time goes on for organisations, they need to be thinking about the type of worker with the skill sets that they're employing into their business, and then thinking about what further resources may be necessary.
And of course, a lot of this conversation that we're having has been captured in the Steel Ceiling, which is a book you've recently released. What was the driver for putting pen to paper?
I suppose in broad terms, I was very keen to capture some of the work that I'd done over 30 years and really give a bit back to the industry that's treated me, in my view, extremely well over my career. I was very keen to capture work that I've done over the last decade with small and medium business in particular. I apply a particular methodology in working with good businesses that are seeking to become better businesses, ideally outstanding, sustainable businesses and able to ride the boom and bust that we typically see in our industry. I also was very keen to make a contribution to the debate that I believe is long overdue in the industry, where we see the effects of boom and bust really reflected in the, if you like, scarcity-based behaviour of businesses that really do struggle to, in many cases, invest for the future rather than really deal with what's directly in front of them.
So when we talked earlier, you said Steel Ceiling is broken into two parts, essentially identifying the characteristics of boom and bust cycles and providing strategies to swim within the flags. Tell us more about that.
I broke the book up into a couple of pieces and with a bit of a roadmap to enable the book to be read in little pieces rather than end to end. So hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. There's a fair bit of subject matter in it. I do deal with what I have talked about as the industry and its unique characteristics. I've mentioned a couple of times it's a boom and bust industry and it's driven by economic cycles. It's not the only industry like that, but it's certainly characteristic of the way it works. I've considered some of the economic forces that go on and how that's resulted in industry consolidation across the board. Really, we're going to see some change in demand for services and what that is going to mean in terms of business investment going forward, and hopefully provides a bit of information to business owners that may not necessarily find the time to lift their head from what they're doing and have a look more broadly at what's going on. The second piece hopefully speaks directly to business owners who are keen to improve their business's chances of becoming better and more sustainable. I've broken the second part of the book up into a why piece, which, as I referred to earlier, about vision, what values means for a business and how we use behaviour as a means by which we can create a culture and manage a culture in a business, being, of course, the way we do things around here. There's a piece there around the what, really the essence of strategy for a sustainable business in our industry, which, as you referred to before, it's really about operating within the flags. And then, the how for business. I describe 4 pillars that we can use as a metaphor to assess the extent to which we have the right elements of investment in the business to enable that first story business, if you will, to be able to build on that foundation and create a multi-story business.
So it certainly sounds like it'll assist owners in working on their business instead of in their business. What are the biggest challenges you see ahead for the industry landscape that still need to be solved?
I briefly mentioned before the what's coming in terms of infrastructure requirements, various numbers referred to in terms of what enabling infrastructure is required to take our solar and wind and hydropower projects that are popping up over most of the country, and then connecting those to the electrical grid. 2030 and the commitments there are not far away. If I was to suggest $150 billion worth of investment there, certainly by industry standards, that's a significant challenge. The next challenge really, as I referred to, is the supply chain consolidation that has been anticipated maybe for a decade or two. The effects of COVID-19 are really going to supercharge that change. So, the consolidation of the industry and the alignment of the various contractors around the major participants to enable true technological shift. I expect we're going to see certainly those changes within the next decade.
And when you think future about the built environment or the built environment industry as a whole, what is it that excites you the most?
It really is reflected in why I chose a steel ceiling as the title for my book, which is effectively a metaphor for that behavioural challenge that as an industry we really need to break through. Why do we need to break through that steel ceiling? Well, we really need not people like me who are closer to the end of their career than the beginning. We really need the people that are going to take this industry forward into the future to really see the value of this industry, become passionate about it. They're smart and passionate people, like my kids as an example, who, I would like to think that they'd be very keen to pick up from where I am currently at and essentially take us forward to the future. So that's what really gets me going, particularly when I'm challenged around that.
Well, Peter, we'd certainly like to congratulate you on providing a valuable and helpful contribution to our built environment, its owners and operators, and we wish you every success with your book, The Steel Ceiling. Thank you for joining us today.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
This podcast was brought to you by VinZero. VinZero help the AEC and manufacturing industries keep pace with digital change and achieve their technological and sustainability leadership goals. VinZero is a company that cares about creating and building a better world. Together, we are working with industry and environmental experts, providing forums and platforms through our VinZero Think community to create conversations that matter to our future generations. We invite you to join in the conversation and participate in our Think community. Like and subscribe to Think Future to stay up to date with the latest innovations and conversations as we take AEC and manufacturing around the world closer to zero. You can download our podcasts at vinzero.com or from your favourite podcast platform. From VinZero Think Future, thanks for listening.